When most people think of Russian wildlife, they picture bears, wolves, and endless snow. Maybe a moose, maybe a fox. But birds? Not exactly top of mind. And yet, Russia is full of them. Big ones, loud ones, brightly colored, weirdly shaped, rarely seen. From eagles with 6-foot wingspans, to owls that look like forest spirits, to tiny songbirds that vanish into Siberian mist. This country is massive, and so is its bird life. Some of these birds survive temperatures that would break your phone. Others nest on cliffs above volcanoes. A few have never been filmed in the wild. And here's the kicker. Many of them are found nowhere else on Earth. So today we're flying through taiga forests, Arctic coastlines, icy wetlands, and mountain valleys to meet 15 bird species that are rare, bizarre, beautiful. Ita paudi audastalipo ovsa, and totally, unapologetically Russian. You won't find parrots here, no flamingos, no tropical jungle drama, just the birds that rule the cold, the wild, and the quiet. This is Birds of Russia, 15 exotic species found nowhere else. Let's fly. If eagles were professional wrestlers, this one would be the heavyweight champion of the North. Meet the Steller's sea eagle, a bird so massive, so dramatic, it makes bald eagles look like interns. With a wingspan stretching over 8 feet, a beak the size of a banana, and eyes that say, "Don't even try it." This is Russia's top aerial predator. It lives mostly along the eastern coast, in Kamchatka, the Sea of Okhotsk, and the mouth of the Amur River. Its diet? Fish, mostly. Salmon, preferably. But it won't say no to waterbirds, small mammals, or even carrion if times are rough. And yes, it's loud. Its call is like a mix of a crow's caw and a cranky goose. Not graceful, but very on brand. Fun fact, Steller's sea eagles are so large and so striking that in 2022, one showed up in New England, USA. Instantly caused a bird-watching frenzy. People flew across states just to catch a glimpse of it. It even made the local news. But in Russia, it's just Tuesday. Despite its power, this eagle isn't invincible. Climate change, overfishing, and habitat loss are slowly shrinking its territory. And with fewer than 5,000 individuals left in the wild, its future isn't guaranteed. So if you ever see a giant dark bird with a snow-white tail and a beak that looks like a medieval weapon, you're not hallucinating. You've just seen the king of Russia's eastern skies. You probably won't see this bird, not because it's extinct or hiding on some cliff, but because the Siberian grouse is basically the James Bond of Russian birds. Quiet, well camouflaged, and a total expert at vanishing into the forest. This round-bodied, ground-dwelling bird lives in the dense taiga forests of eastern Siberia, especially in areas near the Russian Far East. It prefers the cold, the shadows, and silence. If the forest had a monk, this would be it. Visually, the male is a handsome blend of charcoal gray with a white belly and subtle white spots. The female, like many ground birds, is mottled brown for maximum camouflage. But what they both have in common? Zero interest in being noticed. Their diet is simple. Pine needles, berries, buds, the taiga's version of a vegan cafe. And they rarely fly. They'd rather walk, sneak, and freeze in place if danger approaches. Which, frankly, is working. Even experienced birdwatchers struggle to find them. Fun fact, the Siberian grouse is one of the few birds that stay put through Russia's brutal winters. While other birds migrate or hibernate, this one stays year-round, surviving sub-zero temperatures under the cover of dense conifers. And here's the kicker, it's endemic to Russia. You won't find it in Europe, not in China, not in Canada, just here, just Russia. Unfortunately, being shy doesn't make you safe. Logging, forest fires, and human development are slicing up its habitat. And because it's so hard to study, we still don't know exactly how many are left. It's currently listed as near threatened, but the data is thin, just like the line between survival and disappearance. So no, you probably won't see a Siberian grouse, but it's out there, a ghost in the trees, a soft footstep in the snow, and one of Russia's most silent treasures. It's a duck. But it's not your average pond-quacking, bread-chasing duck. The Baikal teal looks like someone designed a waterfowl in Photoshop and then said, "Let's go weird, but elegant." Its head is painted in a dramatic mask of deep green buttery cream and black stripes that sweep back like a superhero. The body is speckled, the feathers have metallic sheens, and the whole bird has an air of quiet confidence. It's like the duck version of a tuxedo with attitude. As its name suggests, it breeds around Lake Baikal in parts of eastern Russia, especially in wetlands and grassy marshes. Come winter, it migrates to Korea, Japan, and eastern China. But it's in Russia where the real story begins. Not long ago, the Baikal teal was in serious trouble. Habitat loss, hunting, and pollution nearly drove it into extinction. In the 1980s, global population estimates were under 20,000. Conservationists were worried, governments were sort of paying attention, and then something incredible happened. The population bounced back. Hard. Today, there are over 1 million Baikal teals, a shocking rebound for a bird that was almost written off. It's now listed as least concern, one of the rare good news stories in bird conservation. Fun fact, despite its success, this bird is incredibly hard to spot in Russia. Its breeding grounds are in remote marshes, often mosquito-infested and inaccessible for most of the year. So while you might see thousands in wintering grounds in Korea, spotting one in Russia is a badge of honor for birders. And when it flies, its wings whistle. Not a squeak, not a quack. A genuine whistle, like the wind flirting with silk. The Baikal teal is proof that nature loves a comeback. It's beautiful, it's strange, and it's survived when few thought it would. In a country known for hard winters and harder stories, this duck is a quiet miracle in feathers. Not all owls look mysterious and wise. Some just look done with everything. Enter the Ural owl, a large pale bird with a round face and a constant expression of, "I didn't ask to be here." But don't let the resting grump face fool you. This owl is a top-tier forest hunter, perfectly adapted to the dark coniferous woods of northern and central Russia. It glides silently through spruce and fir trees, listening, always listening, for the tiniest movement below. The Ural owl is mid to large-sized, with a long tail and soft gray feathers marked with faint streaks. Its big black eyes seem to glow in dim light, and its round, disc-like face helps funnel even the faintest sounds to its ears. It doesn't hoot like a cartoon owl. Instead, it lets out a low, echoing call that sounds more like a distant dog bark than anything bird-like. Fun fact, unlike many owls, the Ural owl is fiercely territorial during breeding season. There have been reports of them attacking humans who wander too close to their nests. Yes, this owl will fight you in the forest, quietly, from behind, with talons. Elegant violence, Russian style. These owls nest in hollow trees or sometimes in abandoned raptor nests. They don't migrate, they stay year-round, toughing out Siberian winters like feathery stoics. Their diet includes voles, mice, frogs, and even small birds. If it moves and fits in a beak, it's food. While not endangered, the Ural owl is a strong indicator of healthy forest ecosystems. It needs old trees, space, and quiet. As logging spreads and habitat fragments, their numbers could decline, quietly, like they do everything else. The Ural owl doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't dress fancy or sing sweet songs, but it belongs to the forest, and the forest is better with it in the shadows. You know this one. Or at least, you think you do. The snowy owl is probably Russia's most internationally famous bird. They thanks to a certain wizard with round glasses and an owl named Hedwig. But here's the thing, the real bird, even cooler. This Arctic predator is built for survival. Its feathers are thick, layered, and cover everything, even its toes. Basically nature's version of a down-filled parka. Males are almost completely white, while females and younger owls have dark bars across their bodies, giving them a marbled, stormy look. They live in Russia's northern tundra, nesting on the ground, often in completely exposed spots. No trees, no camouflage, just snow, wind, and sky. And yet, they thrive. Snowy owls feed mostly on lemmings, and during breeding season, a single pair may eat over 1,600 lemmings to raise their chicks. That's a lot of rodents, and it means their population is directly tied to lemming booms and crashes. Fun fact, when lemmings are scarce, snowy owls erupt. That means they suddenly appear far outside their normal range. They've been seen as far south as Texas and even Florida. Imagine going to the beach and seeing a ghostly white owl staring at you from a palm tree. Unlikely, but technically possible. Despite their global fame, these birds are surprisingly mysterious. They migrate unpredictably. Some spend winters in Siberia, some fly to coastal Russia, others vanish into Arctic emptiness. Satellite tagging has only recently begun to unravel their movements. And yes, they're powerful. They can take down rabbits, ducks, even other birds of prey. Fast, silent, and surprisingly aggressive. This owl doesn't mess around. While not globally endangered, the snowy owl faces threats from climate change, which is shrinking its tundra breeding grounds and messing with prey cycles. So next time you see a cute plush snowy owl in a bookstore, remember, the real one is a tundra sniper with wings. And in the endless white north of Russia, this ghost flies for real. If Grace had feathers, they'd probably look a lot like the Siberian white crane. Tall, snow-white, and impossibly elegant, this bird moves like it's in slow motion, a living sculpture crossing the swamps of Siberia. It's one of the rarest cranes in the world, and it breeds almost exclusively in a remote patch of northeastern Russia, near the basin of the Ob River and the tundra wetlands of Yakutia. Standing over 4 feet tall, with a wingspan stretching up to 7.5 feet, this bird is built for long-distance flight and long-term mystery. Its white plumage glows in the tundra sun, and its face is marked by a bold red mask. No eyeliner needed. These cranes are strict vegetarians. Sedges, tubers, roots, and aquatic plants. Their courtship display includes synchronized dances, wing flapping, and echoing calls that sound like something between a trumpet and a prayer. Fun fact, there are fewer than 4,000 Siberian white cranes left in the wild, and most of them follow a single migration route that takes them from Russia through China to the wintering grounds in the Yangtze River Basin. If any stop along that path is destroyed or disturbed, the entire population is at risk. They're shy, slow to reproduce, and incredibly sensitive to habitat change. In other words, they're terrible at surviving in a world built for speed and noise, but they are fiercely protected. Conservation groups from Russia, China, and international partners have worked for decades to study, monitor, and preserve these birds. Their migration route is sometimes called the Crane Flyway, and it's one of the most important bird corridors in Asia. Still, spotting one in the wild is rare. You'd have to go deep into remote, mosquito-infested marshes, hope it's breeding season, and bring binoculars and patience. But if you do see one, it's unforgettable. Because in a land of harsh winters and hard lines, the Siberian white crane is pure, unfiltered elegance. A ghost in the wetland, a dancer on ice. Once upon a time, the yellow-breasted bunting was everywhere. It was the kind of bird farmers saw every spring, the kind kids grew up recognizing, and the kind no one thought twice about. But today, it's on the brink of extinction. This small, colorful songbird, sometimes called the rice bird, used to breed across the vast forests and farmlands of northern Russia and Siberia, from the Ural Mountains to Kamchatka. In summer, males were easy to spot with their bright yellow chests and rich chestnut backs. Their songs were soft but constant, a soundtrack to the Russian countryside. So what happened? People, specifically mass trapping during migration in East and Southeast Asia. Each fall, millions of these birds flew south, and millions didn't make it back. They were caught in huge numbers and sold as food, mostly in illegal wildlife markets. At its peak, the yellow-breasted bunting population crashed by more than 90% in just a few decades. By the early 2000s, the bird that once numbered in the tens of millions was listed as critically endangered. Fun fact, or rather not so fun, locally it was known as the rice bird because it often fed in rice paddies, making it an easy target for mass netting. In some places, it was considered a delicacy or even a good luck charm. But for the bird, it was a death sentence. In Russia, where they still attempt to breed, sightings are rare and scattered. Conservation efforts are underway, but success is slow. Why? Because migratory birds don't respect national borders, and protecting them requires international cooperation that's fragile at best. Still, there is hope. Stronger enforcement in some countries, education campaigns, and changes in consumer behavior are starting to help. But time is running out. The yellow-breasted bunting is a lesson in how quickly common can become critical. A bird that once sang everywhere now barely whispers. Blink and you'll miss it, literally. The rusty-flanked tree creeper is one of those birds that seems to melt into its surroundings. It doesn't fly much, it doesn't sing loudly, and it doesn't want your attention. This bird is a subspecies of the Eurasian tree creeper, but the Darica form, found in the forests of southeastern Siberia, is different enough to stand on its own. Rustier in color, quieter in presence, and somehow even more ghost-like. Tree creepers in general are designed for one thing: vertical stealth. They cling to tree trunks and spiral upward in search of insects, moving in slow, jerky steps like wind-up toys made of bark and fluff. Their plumage is perfectly cryptic, a patchwork of browns, tans, and streaks that make them look like they're part of the tree. Their curved claws let them grip rough bark, and their slim, down-curved bills are ideal for picking out spiders and beetles from tiny cracks. Fun fact, they almost never climb down. Once they reach the top of a trunk, they'll fly to the base of another and start again. It's like their own little forest parkour routine. Quiet, relentless, oddly charming. In the Russian Far East, where this subspecies lives, they prefer old-growth coniferous forests, the kind of places that smell like pine and snow and feel like they haven't changed in centuries. Which is exactly the problem. Logging and habitat loss are eating away at the very woods these birds rely on. And because they're so hard to spot, scientists still don't fully understand how many are left, or what exact role they play in their ecosystem. They're not flashy, they don't go viral, but their presence means the forest is still working, still intact. The rusty-flanked tree creeper may be small, silent, and easily overlooked, but it's part of the forest's memory, and once it's gone, you might never realize what you missed. You've probably never heard of this bird, and honestly, that's part of the appeal. The Kamchatka leaf warbler is one of Russia's most recent official birds, only formally recognized as a separate species in the early 2000s. Before that, it was lumped in with its look-alike cousins in Asia. But DNA doesn't lie, and neither do subtle differences in song, behavior, and habitat. This tiny warbler breeds almost exclusively on Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, a place known more for erupting volcanoes and grizzly bears than delicate songbirds. And yet, here it is, a bird the size of a ping-pong ball, holding its ground in a landscape built for giants. Visually, it's nothing flashy: olive green back, pale underparts, faint wing bars, classic leaf warbler look. But listen closely, and you'll hear its voice. A thin, fast trill that sounds like a cassette tape stuck on fast forward. Fun fact, this warbler is virtually impossible to identify by sight alone. In fact, most of what we know about it comes from recordings, collected by researchers brave enough to hike across remote volcanic valleys filled with mosquitoes, bears, and fog. It nests low in shrubs, near rivers or wet forest edges. It's shy, quick, and rarely photographed, a true ghost of the undergrowth. Because it looks so similar to other warblers, the Kamchatka leaf warbler was long overlooked. But now that it's recognized as its own species, ornithologists are scrambling to understand its numbers, range, and conservation status. Which frankly is tricky, because it shares its breeding grounds with almost no one. Kamchatka is remote, wild, And getting there requires more than plane tickets. You need permits, gear, and grit. But for those who make the journey, hearing that faint trill among the steaming forests of an active volcano zone, it's like discovering a secret in real time. The Kamchatka leaf warbler doesn't care about attention, but it's a living reminder that even in the loudest landscapes, some things whisper, and those whispers matter. Imagine walking through a quiet forest and suddenly hearing a sound like a tiny electric motor starting up. Nope, not a machine. That's the Sackelin grasshopper warbler. This elusive little bird is named for its call, which sounds like a high-pitched mechanical trill, somewhere between an insect, an old fax machine, and static on a radio. It's not beautiful in the traditional sense, but it's unforgettable. Found mainly on Sackelin Island and parts of the Russian Far East, this warbler lives in dense wet thickets, usually near rivers or forested wetlands. It hates open space. If it were a person, it would definitely sit in the back corner of the room, hoodie up, headphones on. Visually, it's very plain. Olive brown above, pale below, no fancy markings. You could walk right past one and never notice, unless it's singing. And even then, you might think someone dropped a tiny robot in the bushes. Fun fact, the Sackelin grasshopper warbler is part of a group called Steller, often called creeping warblers for their habit of skulking through undergrowth instead of hopping around in trees. They're built for staying low, staying hidden, and sounding weird. And weird works if you're trying to survive. This warbler's range is incredibly limited, making it a near endemic to Russia. Its secretive lifestyle and remote habitat mean it's rarely observed, rarely recorded, and poorly understood. That's a problem for scientists, because if we don't even know how many exist, how do we know if it's declining? So far, it's not listed as threatened, but with increasing development, logging, and habitat change on Sackelin, that status could shift quickly. It may not look like much, but in the right forest, at the right moment, you'll hear that buzz. And just like that, you'll realize the trees are singing in Morse code. Most birds try to stand out with bright reds, sunny yellows, or tropical greens. The Azure tit takes a different approach. It wears ice blue and snow white, like it just walked out of a minimalist art gallery in Siberia. This small songbird is a close cousin of the more familiar Eurasian blue tit, but it's got its own frosty charm. It lives across the southern parts of Russia, from the Ural Mountains to western Siberia, favoring open woodlands, river valleys, and shrubby patches near steppe regions. It's not hard to recognize. A white face, black eye stripe, soft blue cap, pale blue wings, and a white belly. Basically, it looks like a marshmallow that learned fashion. Despite the delicate look, the Azure tit is surprisingly hardy. It stays year-round in much of its range, enduring freezing temperatures that would send other songbirds packing. They huddle in tree cavities, fluff up their feathers, and get on with life, quietly and efficiently. Fun fact, the Azure tit has been known to hybridize with the Eurasian blue tit, where their ranges overlap, producing a pastel-colored, super cute combo that keeps birders guessing. Yes, even birds have unexpected love stories. Behavior-wise, it's quick, twitchy, and energetic, constantly flitting between branches, looking for insects, seeds, and occasional spiders. It has a high-pitched tee-tee-tee call that cuts through cold air like a tiny laser beam. While not endangered, Azure tits are a good indicator species for the health of their open woodland habitats. They rely on a mix of old trees and shrubs, meaning deforestation and monoculture planting can quietly squeeze them out. They're easy to overlook in a list filled with giant eagles and jungle ghosts. But make no mistake, the Azure tit is a little ambassador of the Russian steppe, elegant, resilient, and dressed for winter, year-round. At first glance, you might think it's a crow, or maybe a strange-looking grackle. But then it starts to sing, and everything changes. This is the black lark, one of the most visually confusing and vocally beautiful birds in Russia. Native to the steppe regions of southern Russia and Kazakhstan, the black lark is the only lark species where the male is almost entirely black. Glossy, inky and dramatic, like it's always dressed for a goth wedding. But here's the twist. It's not a predator, not a scavenger, and definitely not a corvid. It's a songbird through and through. And when it sings, it fills the open landscape with a liquid, warbling melody that can rival any nightingale. Males perform flight displays where they spiral high into the air, singing as they go, then parachute gently back down like a feathered showman. It's part love song, part aerial flex. Fun fact, despite the name, females aren't black at all. They're a dusty brown with fine streaks, the perfect camouflage for nesting in low grass. Which means birders spotting a black lark pair often feel like they're seeing two different species. The species prefers open, grassy habitats, often near semi-arid zones or farmlands. It feeds on seeds and insects, foraging mostly on the ground. And unlike forest birds, it thrives in the wide, empty spaces where wind is the soundtrack. But here's the catch. Those wide open spaces, they're shrinking. Agriculture, overgrazing, and habitat fragmentation are putting pressure on many steppe-dependent birds, including this one. Still, for now, the black lark remains stable, and its rich, rolling song continues to echo over the plains. A bird that looks like a shadow, but sings like sunlight. Most birds weigh a few ounces. Some, maybe a pound or two. But the Dalmatian pelican, this bird weighs in at up to 30 pounds with a wingspan over 11 feet. This is making it one of the heaviest flying birds on Earth. Just yes, it still flies. Gracefully, not really. But when it lifts off, it's like watching a blimp take flight. It shouldn't work, but somehow, it does. The Dalmatian pelican lives in wetlands and freshwater lakes across southeastern Europe and Central Asia, with key breeding grounds in southern Russia, near the Volga Delta and the Caspian Sea coast. It prefers quiet, shallow waters with plenty of fish and little human noise. Basically, it's a giant introvert with feathers. Its appearance is striking. Silver-white plumage that gets wilder and scruffier with age, curly feathers on its head, yes, curly, and a massive orange pouch that looks like it could hold a small laptop. Fun fact, during breeding season, the pouch turns bright reddish orange, adding drama to an already dramatic bird. And when feeding, it uses that pouch like a scoop net, splashing, lunging, and somehow not tipping over. Despite their size, Dalmatian pelicans are surprisingly skittish. They'll abandon nests if disturbed by boats, noise, or even too much drone photography. They're also sensitive to water levels. If a lake drops too low or floods too high, breeding can fail entirely. They're currently listed as near threatened, but thanks to conservation efforts, especially in Europe and Russia, populations are showing signs of recovery. Still, their range is patchy, and their size makes them vulnerable. Power lines, wetland drainage, and overfishing can all pose threats. Watching a Dalmatian pelican take off is like watching evolution in motion. A prehistoric beast rising slowly, awkwardly, then suddenly soaring. It's weird. It's wonderful. And it's Russia's flying heavyweight champion. If birds had royal families, the Oriental stork would be wearing a crown and gliding across palace courtyards. Tall, snow-white, and strikingly elegant, this stork looks like it was designed to move slowly and with purpose, because it basically was. Once widespread across East Asia, it's now critically endangered, and Russia's Far East holds one of its last remaining natural breeding populations. Standing nearly 5 feet tall with a wingspan over 7 feet, the Oriental stork looks similar to its cousin, the white stork, but there are key differences. It's bigger, entirely white-bodied with jet-black wingtips, and has a black beak instead of red. No fancy colors, just clean, monochrome majesty. It nests in large trees or artificial platforms near wetlands, rice paddies, and floodplains, often close to the Amur River basin. Its diet is classic stork fare: fish, frogs, crustaceans, and the occasional small rodent. Fun fact: unlike some of its relatives, the Oriental stork is mute. It doesn't vocalize. Instead, it communicates through bill clattering, a rapid-fire beak rattle that sounds like someone typing aggressively on a vintage typewriter. Once extinct in Japan and South Korea, the species has been reintroduced there through captive breeding. But in Russia, it still exists naturally, albeit in small, vulnerable numbers. Current estimates suggest fewer than 3,000 individuals remain globally, and habitat loss is the main threat. Wetland drainage, agricultural expansion, and pollution have chipped away at its fragile world. And because it breeds so slowly, one pair raises just 1 to 3 chicks per year. Recovery is painfully slow. Still, it's a beloved bird. In many East Asian cultures, it's seen as a symbol of longevity, peace, and fidelity. And when you see one standing perfectly still in a misty marsh, you understand why. It doesn't need bright colors to impress. It doesn't need a song to be heard. The Oriental stork is beauty and silence. And in Russia's wildest wetlands, its quiet presence still reigns. Some birds are flashy, some are loud, and some, like the great gray owl, just stare into your soul and silently judge your life choices. This is one of the largest owls in the world by length, measuring up to 33 inches tall with a wingspan over 5 feet. But don't let the size fool you. Most of that is fluff. What makes the great gray owl iconic isn't just its size, but its face. A huge circular disc with concentric rings and piercing yellow eyes. It looks like a satellite dish designed by a very stylish ghost. It lives in the deep boreal forests of northern Russia, thriving in old, cold, quiet places, especially where open meadows meet thick coniferous woods. Perfect hunting ground for a bird that prefers ambush to chase. Unlike other owls that hoot dramatically, the great gray's call is a soft, low hoo, more like a distant foghorn than a haunted house. It hunts mainly by sound, using its enormous facial disc to funnel even the faintest noises to its asymmetrical ears. It can hear a vole moving under a foot of snow. Fun fact, this owl rarely builds its own nest. It steals old ones from hawks, ravens, or even squirrels. Low effort, high reward. It's not endangered, but it's sensitive to logging and disturbance. It needs old-growth forests with snags for nesting and clearings for hunting. Without that mix, it disappears, quietly, as always. And while it looks like a stern professor of owlology, the great gray is famously gentle with its young. In fact, chicks sometimes climb trees with their beaks and claws if they fall out of the nest too early. It's a bird full of contrasts. Huge but silent, intimidating but soft, ghostly but grounded. The perfect finale to our journey. Because if there's any bird that sums up Russia's wilderness, it's this one. Cold, quiet, powerful, and absolutely unforgettable. From the icy winds of Siberia to the steamy volcanic slopes of Kamchatka, we've traveled across the largest country on Earth to meet some of its rarest, wildest, and most underrated flying residents. Russia may be known for bears, wolves, and snow, but its bird life? Unreal. We saw giant eagles with banana-sized beaks, owls that hear through snow, ducks that whistle, songbirds that scream, and warblers that sound like dial-up internet. Some of these species are thriving, some are disappearing, and some have barely been seen, even by scientists. But all of them are part of a vast, fragile ecosystem that stretches across 11 time zones. They are the voices of the forest, the shadows in the snow, the quiet survivors of an unforgiving land, and maybe a reminder that the wild still has secrets worth protecting. If you enjoyed this video, let us know. Which bird surprised you the most? Which one would you fly across the world to see? And if you want to explore more incredible birds from the far corners of the planet, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. Until next time, keep your binoculars close, your curiosity wide open, and never underestimate the birds of the north.